Hello and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. Now, for renewable energy supporters, this was set up as the year of statehouse setbacks in the US. But how would this have affected the renewable energy industry? Here for an insider's point of view is David Mapley, founder of City Windmills. David, thank you very much for coming in.
Hello Monica, pleasure to be here.
Great. Now, looking at the legislature, it was supposed to be that at least 12 different states were going to roll back or completely cancel out mandates which encourage utilities to buy a certain amount of renewable energy.
Yes.
How this hasn't really been the case though, has it?
Well, in practice, 12 states have tabled motions to try and reduce the renewable energy content in the makeup of that particular state's consumption. However, I think there have been just as many bills applied this year. In 18 states, 30 bills have been lodged to actually increase the amount of renewable energy that is drawn from solar and wind. So actually, on balance, nothing's changed. Yes, there was a flurry with the Republican Party successors statewide last year in the 2012 elections, and instantly the cry of forcing energy companies to buy more renewable energy pushes up costs, is not competitive. But the reality is, even at the industry level, Jim Rogers, the CEO of Duke Energy, which is the biggest utility company in the US, he himself says we are committed to and will continue to source more energy from the renewable sector. So really, industry is saying we know where the trend is going. If politicians want to play football, that's fine, but we know what the consumers want. We know what's good for industry, what's good for our economy and for our country. So really, it's held course as legislation.
Now, of course, that was what I was going to say. Not everyone was surprised by the results as we reached the end of, the kind of legislative season, as it were. But at City Windmills, how do you position yourself in the kind of in anticipation of this?
Well, we've taken a very simple and pragmatic approach that irrespective of where the utility companies source their energy from, be it nuclear, coal, oil, gas, renewables, there are still tremendous problems with the grid system in the United States. When there are major storms like hurricanes or ice storms, houses get disconnected from the grid, and of course with Hurricane Sandy and the ice storm earlier this year, you have whole communities, 2-3 million homes without electricity for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, which is a tremendous shock to a family or to a household that's trying to operate through school term and work in general. So our product is still designed to go to the individual houses and give people some degree of independence or backup support should the grid fail. Secondly, we're seeing, of course, a pickup in the US economy now, which translates to increased demand for energy. And increased demand for energy, if that's coincidental with a hot summer, you're going to be suffering brownouts, advertising to do your washing at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're not sure that the household consumer would want to buy into that sort of proposition if they can, for an affordable price, buy a generating unit on the rooftop of their house that takes advantage of wind.
Now, enacting energy standards obviously takes a lot of collaboration and cooperation from an array of different groups, but in your experience, are you thinking that public opinion is more coming round to the idea of renewable energy? What sort of trends or kind of reaction are you getting these days?
Well, I think the first stage of reactions were, it's a good idea, it's too expensive. What you had, particularly pioneered by the Chinese, and that's a political hot potato in itself, but the Chinese led the pricing down to a much more affordable level with solar, and we've seen a similar advance in battery storage for households. So now you can affordably store energy that you generate yourself. Solar, and now we're taking that lead with wind and using very similar electronics to that of the solar system, solar industry, to take advantage of reduced costs and say to households, we have an affordable solution for you and you can be independent. So we've taken advantage of those economic factors to build our industry position.
Now, there is one aspect which renewable energy purporters can really point to, and it might get a little bit more attention, rightly or wrongly, than climate change, and that is the idea of jobs and the jobs that this sector can create. Is that right? Is that something?
Very much so. If you take, for example, Kansas, well known for its tornadoes and wind, Kansas sources 11.4% of its energy from the wind sector. It's created almost 3,000 jobs in the state since wind farms became vogue. $7 to $10 million of property taxes and land leases year in, year out. So it's actually been quite an economic boost to Kansas. and one of the senators who was sort of pro-free market and sort of pro-competition has actually modified his stance and realised this has created jobs in our state. It's created jobs and income, and it is green. So I think you'll see a moderation in stance by politicians as they start to realise the economic benefit of investment in new technologies that do benefit the environment and the consumers.
Fantastic. Now, we've been speaking predominantly about the US, obviously. City Windmills is based sort of hopscotches over between Switzerland and the US. So the things that we're talking about, is it fair to compare and contrast between the two different countries? What sort of experience are the two differences there? I
think the first major difference is the infrastructure in the US is very much above ground. You'll see cables hanging through trees all over the countryside connecting houses to each other and to the grid. Whereas Switzerland, it's very much below ground, so you don't have the interruption to service in Switzerland. I think it's typically about 16 minutes a year versus what could be counted in weeks in the US. That's a big difference in terms of emergency backup come winter. I think, though, Switzerland is also well placed with hydroelectric. It has the mountains, of course, and snow that produces lots of hydroelectric energy during the spring months and a series of dams. So they're very well placed. But of course, it's also expensive, and they have nuclear. They have nuclear, which they're drawing from nuclear power stations within Switzerland and on its borders. And certainly the political direction in Bern is to move away from that. And Switzerland is a very green country. It's quite socially responsible, and I think we'll try and push itself forward as a leader within Europe of being as green and socially responsible as possible. So I think we're in a good place to see that change and be part of that and work with Parliament and clean tech groups here to bring a deliverable product to the consumer once again, and to small industries, factories, to be as green as possible.
The times they be a-changing, but thank you so much, David, for coming in and talking us through the updates and what's going on in this sector once again.
You're welcome. Thank you, Monica.
Well, that's all from David and myself. Please do click back to Dukascopy TV for all of the latest news and updates. Goodbye for now.